Or mildly cool examples. How about that? Yes?
A hash map. What is a hash map? Is that a string integer match that you put on the table?
It's a whatever to whatever match.
A hash table.
It's kind of like a hash table from whatever to whatever. Okay, we are recording. Life is good. We didn't start. A hash table is a data structure. A hash table is an implementation detail, right? The interface is a map. And basically it maps from whichever value to whichever value. It could be a map from person to salary, right? Whatever you want, right? It's almost like a database table, right?
So it's already ready.
It's a what?
The hash table is ready to use. It's not something that us as developers need to build.
No, you don't build it. I mean, you will build it. We may build something just for fun, and you will see how to build them in data structures, but you just see how to build them and then you never build them. You always use. Because somebody spent 6 months trying to make sure that the one that they wrote is incredibly fast. And so there is no good reason for you to try to build your own. Okay, we have collections demo. That is cool. Let's try to build something that may help us because it will use a hash table and other things. And actually will be directly related to Neil's question and maybe to Marcelo's. If I can figure out how to close this horrible thing. Okay. Phone class, that's horrible, but that's okay. Imagine that we want to represent a phone book, a contact application, like the one on your phone. And we're going to keep it in memory because we don't know how to access databases or files yet. Right? So what do we want to put? And we are going to make it simple so we can do it in half an hour. Right? What does a contact have? We have a name. Maybe let's try to create class contact, right? Public. Do we want just name? How about first name? And it's a string, right? Last name. Then what else do we have? A phone number, right? Do we want to store one phone number? Let's do one phone number, right? And what is it? I'm going to call it a string. What the heck is a phone number? I don't know. That's one where I'm always torn, right? What is a phone number? Is it an integer or a string? Or, yeah, I tend to think of it as a string rather than an integer, because you never add them up. You don't add two phone numbers or divide one by the other. So we don't really use them as ints. It's a string that contains only digits. So let's do this super simple stuff, right? I'm creating the public because I'm terrible. You should not do this. Do as I say, not as I do. It's usually not that terrible, but. And let's create a constructor. right? Okay, so I'm going to create my phone book class, right? I'm going to call it a phone book. It's a contacts thingy. Can you think of a better name? Contacts thingy is not a better name. Phone book works. You still remember when we used to have phone books? Right? Yeah. I guess you still get spam, right? You still get one of those in your driveway once in a while, but okay. What is a phone book? All right. We need a bunch of contacts, right? So, how do we keep a bunch of things? Okay, let's do it a collection. And I'm going to keep it in an array list. Is that cool? What things are we going to have? What kinds of operations are we going to have? Arrays are not operations. Arrays are data structures. So let's assume that I have void add contact, right? Okay, we want to be able to get all the contacts with a given first name, right? What does that return? Well, it could return one phone number, right? But what could be a problem with that? What if there is more than one person with the same first name, right? So what do I need to return? I need to return a bunch of phone numbers, right? Or actually a bunch of contacts. Does that make sense? And then I'll let whoever is my client choose which one they want. So, and for now, and the same for last name. Yeah. How does this look like? We should have built an interface, but, right? Now, how can we build this thing, right? I could build this by, what would I do here in add contact? I could just add a contact. Woohoo! Right? And in here, I can loop through my contacts, right? Find out the ones that I need and put them into another list and return that list, right? Let's implement one just for fun, right? For contact C in contacts, actually do collection of contact. I can actually do list or array list. We just go through the list. If it's the right first name, we just add it, right? And in the end, we just return that thingy. Whenever I cannot think of a good name for my variable that I'm computing, I use readval for return value, whatever I'm going to return.
Is that because of polymorphism that you can return a list as a collection?
Yes, it's because of polymorphism, right? Collections and interface, so I can return anything that implements that interface collection.
But you could not do the other way around, right?
No. Actually, this is called Liskop's substitution principle. Barbara Liskop was a professor somewhere. She was one of the Superman or Superwoman in software engineering. And the idea is subtypes are the things that support the exact same operations. And so as long as it supports, the idea is you should be able to use a subtype anytime you have a supertype, but not the other way around. Yes, so I could return, a list of contact, but not the other way around. Don't think we have anything above collection as an interface, but this idea makes sense. You can see how we could use something like this. Let me go and use it. Public static void main. Why doesn't this work? What don't you like? My contact static, main non-static. Oh, this should be static. Since we are putting them inside the same file, instead of making them separate files, we need to declare them as static. So I can do that. Ideally, we should have them separate files, but I'm too lazy. Okay. Oh, and it wasn't first name. Actually, we want one more thing. We want a function to print a list of contacts. So we actually want to add a toString to this, right? I'm gonna be uber lazy and generate it. Don't do this, but it saves us time. You shouldn't be doing this because you should be trying to get as much practice as you can. Do this in January, not now. So I can just do a for each loop. right? So that would allow me to come here and do call print contacts on pb dot get contacts for first name Oscar, and we should get Oscar Garcia and Oscar Vu, right? Run, don't run collections demo, edit configurations, run. So hopefully we get 2 contacts. Woohoo! Right? Now, what happens if we add a lot of contacts? Right? If we have 4 contacts, then going through the list is super easy, right? Now, what happens if we add 5,000 contacts? Going through the list slightly sucks, right? So, one thing we can do is keep a map of string to contact. Actually, is that okay? And then do here something like contacts by first name dot put would doing something like this work, right? What's the problem with this? What happens if we add somebody else with the same first name? We override it, right?
Yes.
So what do we need to do? Our map has to map first names to what? To oodles of contacts, right? For some class that does oodles, right? What do we want to use here instead of oodles? Sorry. Yeah. Collection or, yeah, let's do this. Oops. So that's Niels saying, yes, we can do horrible things. Does this make sense? Let me do this. So now we can't, this is what we are trying to do, right? But we can't do that. We need to do we need to check whether a contact is already, whether a first name is already there, right? And if there is, what do we do?
Check their last name.
If there is one contact with that same first name, right? Then we would add it to that collection, right? But if there isn't, then we need to insert a new collection, right? So we would do if contacts by first name contains key. Arr! If it doesn't contain it, right? What are we going to add? Add to that first name, what do we need to do, right? What list should we put? Just a list containing that contact. Does that make sense?
What is contains key return?
True or false. Returns true if the map contains the key and false if it doesn't. Does that make sense? That would tell us whether there's something there, right?
Could you also use is empty?
I could, but it doesn't give me the same information. You may not be empty as a map, right? The map may not be empty, but still won't contain an entry for this particular first name.
Okay.
Right? So what I'm checking is whether there's already an entry for Orlando's, right? If there is no entry, then I need to add the entry, right? If there already is an entry, then I need to add this contact to the list that's in there, right?
So you are creating a list of first names.
No, I'm creating a map from first names to a list of contacts. So,
So this collection is the second argument for map. Is this a list of first names? Like
no, it's a list of contacts. So I'm going to have basically, or let's do Oscar maps to a contact that has Oscar Garcia 1, 2, 3, and another contact that has Oscar Wu 3, 4, 5. So I have a bunch of contacts for a given name. Does that make sense? So it is a map from string to a list of contacts.
so whatever name is gonna have this structure.
The map, contacts by first name, is going to have this structure.
Even though there's just one entry.
Actually, initially it's going to be empty. It's going to have one entry when I add the entry. But each entry is of this shape, right? So I'm going to have Orlando with our thing, right? It's going to map to one guy. And what's the other thing that we had? Marcelo, right? That's what I want to have, right? Does that make sense? So in order to add it, right, I need to first go see if it's there, right? So initially it's not going to be there, right? So I need to add it. So I add a list containing that contact. So when I add this guy, this is what's going to happen, right? When I add Oscar Garcia, the same thing happens, and now I have this. Now, if I already have an entry for Oscar, right, I need to add the entry to the already existing list, right? So I need to do Maybe. Does this make sense? And that would change this to just what? Actually, not quite, but does this make sense? May even work. Ah, it didn't. Unsupported operation. So I can't really do this. A list that doesn't have. Oh God. Okay. Array list. Arrays.athList doesn't do anything useful. Isn't this cool?
So C dot first name returns the name of the list.
Returns the first name of the contact, and I'm using that as my key.
Okay, so that's why you're calling the add method.
This guy?
Yeah.
Yes.
So like return Orlando. So we call Orlando dot add.
No. Wait. I'm calling that on contacts by first name dot get of C dot first name. What is that gonna return me? What is contact by first name? It's a map from string to what?
The list.
To a list of contacts. So that expression is going to return what?
In our example.
A list of contacts. Not a random. A list containing only a random. It is a list.
Yeah.
And so to that list I'm
The
adding
key.
one more entry. Not the key. The key is the string Orlando. Not the person, not the contact Orlando. The key is a bunch of letters, right? There is a contact, right, whose first name is Orlando. And then there is a list that contains a bunch of contacts, right? And there's a list that contains only one contact, and that contact's first name is Orlando.
What I'm having a hard time to see is in what are you calling this method?
Add on whatever contact by first name dot get returns, right? Which is a list of contacts.
Okay. In our example, what is it? Could you scroll up?
In our example, the only place where this gets called, right? The only time that this line would get called is what? Only on the second Oscar, right? When I'm entering Oscar Blue,
Yeah,
right?
it returns true.
That's when it would return true, right? And so that contact by first name dot get C dot first name is going to contain a list containing Oscar Garcia. And then to that list I'm going to add Oscar Blue. So now in that map I have Oscar mapped to two different contacts, or to a list containing those two contacts. Does that make sense?
So in this example, it's going to return Oscar.
It's going to return a list containing Oscar Garcia. The output of my map is a list of contacts, always. It's not a string, it's not a contact, it's a list of contacts. If when you say Oscar, you mean the list that contains one contact. The first name is Oscar.
I'm saying that first Oscar before.
Yeah, but it's a list containing that guy.
Yeah.
Does this make sense? Actually, let me see what happens if we do. It's all gonna blow up. Woohoo! Yeah, that's cool. Print, yeah. Yes. Cool. The map by default returns null if the collection is not there. If the element is not there, which is good and bad, because you cannot insert nulls as the values in a map. But so this one will blow up. So we need to do something different. Maybe if contacts or do it on the other, right? Do it on the other end. Maybe it makes more sense to do it here. So we never return null, which is usually a good idea. So now it would work. We just don't print anything. This idea makes sense. Does this make your brain hurt? It shouldn't, right?
Well, it's not hard to make my brain hurt.
Should we do the one for last name? What do we want to check? So add is put your map. Oh. CL. So this would be almost the same thing, right? Let's test it. We added two Garcias, right? Cool. So we get this from with the first name Oscar, and then this with the last name Garcia. Is this cool or what? What? It is cool, right? This is actually fairly common, right? End up with, since maps and sets and lists and things like that are so powerful, we end up with maps of lists that map to other lists and things like that. It's relatively common to have those kinds of things. Any questions on this? No? Did it help? Or hurt? Or both? Both. Cool. That is the right answer.
I was going to say most things in life are both.
Yes. That's what I was looking for. Let me try another one. Just to do cool stuff. Which one is it? Doesn't show me anything else. Since we never and we can actually do some other cool stuff. Let's go. Let's do this. We are gonna use a stack. Hopefully. Yes, stack is actually an implementation. Woohoo! A stack is a kind of collection, right? I can iterate over it, but I can also do push and pop, right? What does pushing do, right? It adds the element to the stack, right? Now, if I do pop, what do I expect to get out? What should I get out? You should expect that I because it is a stack, right? If I put something on a stack of plates, right? I put them one on top of the other, so the first one that I pick is the last one that I put in, right? So there's a fairly decent chance that if I do change this, God, hate you thingy. This, I will hopefully get 3, unless Java does weird stuff. Ah! Does that make sense? Yes? Now, let's start building. There is something that we have mentioned but we haven't actually used, right? Which is this guy. What is this guy? You type it every time, right? What does it mean?
Arguments to the command.
It's the arguments to the command I type, right? It is, main is a standard function, right? And what it takes is an array of arguments, right? And so in my run configuration that I put here, because I have an IDE, I have to do it here. If I'm running this from the command line, I'll give the command and then put a bunch of arguments after, and they'll be passed. Here, I have to put them here, right? I'm passing 1, a space, 2, a space, right? So the spaces use the separators, say 10, 2, plus 3, and star. So I'm passing 5 arguments. Does that idea make sense? When I run my thing. So let me do that. For string args. Just gonna push them, right? And then while not stack dot is empty. And I get them in reverse order, right? Okay. I know. Yes. Cool. Is this cool or what? Now, I'm going to torture you with the standard torture device invented by computer people, which is reverse Polish notation. How do we write mathematical expressions normally? Infix, right? I'm writing stuff like 1 plus 2 minus 3 times 5, 6, right? And we understand it, that's how we write mathematical expressions. What's the problem with that? Well, order of operations, right?
Yes.
What's the result of that thing? I don't know. Did I add first or later? Or what if I do this? What is the result of that? Maybe did they do the minus first and then the other thing they added, or, right? This tends to be confusing. hopefully you guys got out of middle school, so you know this, right? What would be the answer to that? Negative 19, right?
Yeah.
It's, the 1 is positive, so it's minus 2 and minus 18, so it's minus 20 plus 1 is minus 19, right? Maybe. Probably.
Negative 20 or 19.
But it is a pain, right? When they first started doing computers, right? And so we invented parentheses, right? What is the answer to that one? Is it the same or not? No, right? Now I have, yeah, 2 minus 18, so that's 16, right? And now the minus,
Negative 16 would be 17, actually.
yes, is actually 16 plus 1, 17, right? Does that make sense? And if you don't believe me, I'm going to show you guys something that will blow your mind. Maybe.
That's what it sounds like.
Ah! Hate you, Max. Every browser has the keystrokes are different from. Every browser has a JavaScript interpreter. So, yeah. It's not exactly the same in Java, but it's the same in almost everything, right? Okay. So every browser has a JavaScript interpreter that you can use the calculator. Reverse Polish notation, also called postfix notation. It writes the operators after the operands. So if we were to write this, right, as reverse Polish, we'll write it 3/6 times 2 minus 1 minus. Right? Maybe? Sorry? Ah.
18 minus 2.
Oh yeah. 2 3/6 times actually, but then 1 minus minus, right? Is that no?
It's minus.
1 minus. Right? Yes. It has the property that you never need parentheses. It has the problem that it looks ugly as hell. It looks ugly as hell because we never use it, right? And so that makes it look ugly as hell. But it has a really cool property that you never need parentheses. As long as your operators have a defined take a defined number parameter, right? And you can evaluate this, right, by pushing stuff onto a stack. So when I see numbers, right, I push them onto the stack. When I see an operator, I will take out 2 numbers from the stack, execute the operation, and push the result back on the stack. So if my expression was correct, at the end I'll have 1 number on the stack, which is the result. Does that make sense? So if I was trying to execute this, right, I would do put 2, 3, and 6 on the stack. Then I see the times, so I take 3 and 6 out of the stack, push 18, so I end up with 2 and 18 in my stack, right? Then I see the minus, so I take out the 18 and the 2, execute it. 2 minus 18 is minus 16, right? So that's what I put in my stack. Then I see the 1, push it onto the stack. And then I see the minus, right? This is wrong.
Should be 17.
No, that would give me minus 15. So I needed to put the 1 at the very beginning. Yes. My expressions look like this, right? I see first all the numbers and then all the operators.
So it solves the numbers right to left, but uses the factors that go in left to right for the sign, multiplicate the mathematical signs from left to right.
It actually always does them from, sort of, kind of, yes.
Okay.
If you are old enough, and probably none of you are, Oscar may have, because I didn't use them, but I grew up in Mexico, so all my timing is messed up. The first calculators used reverse Polish notation. And so the first calculators, way before they were in cell phones, actually you had to type like that.
I used to Hewlett Packard calculators.
The Hewlett-Packard still did that up until not that long ago, right? Because this is one generation before us, right? I mean, this is at some point in time I found one from one of my uncles or something like that. So this is one generation before me. This is like in the 50s or something like that, in the 60s maybe. And basically to make it easy for the computer, they did that. And so after that, we have all tortured students with this, because it looks like fun. Yeah, isn't it fun? And actually, you probably shouldn't be surprised, right? People will take any kind of abuse. So people got used to this, and they'll write it this way. So shall we try to build something that will execute that stuff? We'll get it from here. We can modify this thingy to make 10 to 3 times plus, right? That'll be 6 plus 10, 16, right? Does that make sense? So actually I wouldn't be pushing, right? So I'll do for string arg in args if integer parse int what does parse int does? I think God, Java has this horrible thing, right? Yay! Yeah, it throws exceptions. God. This is horrible. Yeah, it will throw an exception which we don't know how to deal with. Java sucks sometimes. You give me something nicer? This is the reverse. Never mind, there is no nice thing. We are not supposed to use exceptions. Okay, we'll do it. We'll do it some other time with exceptions. And blackjack. Oh wait, that was a different thing. So we'll come back to this one when we cover exceptions. How about that? For now, you saw how stacks work. Any other questions about collections and stacks and lists? What's the other one? What's the companion of a stack? A queue, right? That's just, you get them out in the same order that you put them in, like a line at the supermarket or movie theater or wherever you see lines. We don't do those too much here. Entering a concert or something like that, we do lines, right? So now you can say that we cover stacks and queues. No. Just, you know that they exist. Shall we try? Nah. I think we can call it a day or a night, unless you guys have questions and use the last 10 minutes for assignments. You have questions. Ask them. No? Neil has questions.
Using a map.
Sorry?
Can you go through maps using a map in an advanced flow?
Maps. Oh, how do I iterate over a map?
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to put it here, right? Do a map from string to strings? Why not? So imagine that we have a map where we're going to put the equivalence from English to Spanish, right? And using our tremendous knowledge of Spanish, we map 1 to uno, 2 to dos, and 3 to tres. I have caps lock. We are well on our way to building a translator, right? Now, what do you mean with iterate? Iterate over what?
I guess iterate
We can iterate over the keys or the values or the entries.
how would the
Okay. The entries, we have entry set that gives us the entries. Now, what's an entry, right? It's a, this is horrible, but map of string to string dot entry. Oh no, it's the other way around, map dot entry of string to string. And this map.entry has get key and get value. So this is one way, and so let me delete this. Just call this. That would allow me to iterate over all the entries in my map. I could also iterate over all the keys and go from the key to the value. I could iterate over all the values, but there's not much I can do with the value because I cannot do the reverse mapping, right? So instead of this, I could do so now what I have here is the key, so what would I use to get the value? How do I get a value out of a map? How do I get a value out of an array list? How do I get a value out of an array list? How do I get a value out of an array list? What method do I use? Anybody remembers? Sorry? A value set would give me the set of values, but how do I get? I have the key here, right? How do I get the value that corresponds to that key on the map? We use the get method, right? So this would basically be a slightly less efficient way of doing the same thing. Does this make sense? Is that cool? So it depends on what you mean by iterating.
Yeah, okay. So that makes sense. You can't iterate over entire maps. You can use entries,
I mean,
values, or
keys.
yes.
That's what iterate over an entire map means, right? You iterate, by iterating you get the elements one by one, right? That's what iterating means. So you are iterating over the entire map by going over the entries.
Okay, cool. And that answers my question.
Any other questions? What maps, collections, stacks, queues? No? Cool. Then I will see you guys eventually. Monday? Yeah.
That's what comes next, anyway.
Yeah.